What are the biggest opportunities in Ethereum, you think?
I think the biggest blockers around developer growth, getting people to onboard hackathons need a big reset. And I think this is a huge opportunity to rip up the rulebook on hackathons. To me, become a bit of a prize farming game rather than what it was originally intended. I think people underestimate the power of local communities and especially DevConnect volunteers. If you're a DevConnect, go and talk to some volunteers. I met multiple people from investment banks volunteering in the last DevCon. I met people who were like, "Oh, I'm a lawyer and I love blockchain and I want to come and like work in the ecosystem, so I thought I would volunteer."
Welcome to the Allo.Capital podcast. If you're just joining us, we are summoning Allo.Capital, a new spin-out from Gitcoin that is designed to build the capital allocation layer of the post-tokenization, post-AI internet. There is big upside here. Capital allocation is a multi-trillion-dollar design space. VCs, governments, NGOs, and DAOs all have to allocate capital to survive and thrive. But it is also a place where we can start small. Every time you spend money, you are allocating capital. We are threading a through line, partnering with builders, researchers, and funders to figure out what on-chain AI capital allocation will look like and building it on Ethereum. If you want to learn more, visit our website at Allo.Capital, where you can download the Allo books for free, play with some of our dApps, join the Telegram, or participate in the DAO. My guest today is James Smith of the Ethereum Foundation. James leads EcoDev, or ecosystem development, at the Ethereum Foundation, where he coordinates efforts to accelerate Ethereum's real-world adoption through builder support, community engagement, and public goods funding. Under his leadership, EcoDev recently underwent a major restructure to better support developers, founders, enterprises, and institutions shaping the next generation of Ethereum infrastructure and applications. Excited to have him on the podcast today. I think you're going to enjoy it. Hey, James, how are you?
I'm good, thanks. How are you doing?
Great. It's the day after the 10 years of Ethereum party, so looking forward to the next 10 years in the Ethereum ecosystem. Maybe start with an introduction of yourself and your role at the Ethereum Foundation.
Yep, sure. So no hangovers today, which I'm glad about as well. So I am James. I lead ecosystem development at Ethereum Foundation. We're going to get into what that means later, but a quick background about myself is worked in London for many years, decided to go and find a new path, and that new path was startups. And I actually started 2 e-commerce businesses, which I sold. I found that fairly unintellectually stimulating, if I'm being completely honest with you. And then I found this thing called DeFi, and I started taking self-paying loans, and then I got into protocol governance, and then I started talking to people inside the Ethereum Foundation, and so far I've been at the Ethereum Foundation for the past 4 years.
Beautiful. And what's your role at the Ethereum Foundation, and what's the plan for ecosystem development at the Ethereum Foundation?
So I started off life with Danny Ryan working on staking research. I thought, oh, how am I ever going to teach Danny Ryan something about staking? And the hilarious thing is it took me 2 days to find something he didn't know. So I'd obviously set my bar really low in terms of expectations of how wide staking actually is. So then I did that for about a year and a half, and then it started blossoming and I took on many projects, and I became kind of if it didn't have a home, it came to me. And then we started building a team around that. Then there was 4 of us, 5 of us. And if it didn't have a natural place to fit inside the Ethereum Foundation, we ended up running with that project. And that was a really fun thing to do. Now we've done a big restructure around the EF, and there's now about 15 teams in ecosystem development. Some are not yet on the org chart, some are. And that'll be, as we hire more people, that'll become apparent of what we're doing there as well. It's things in like AI, L2 coordination.
It's quite an interesting time to be working in ecosystem development. It feels like, I mean, maybe the writings, maybe I'm reading into this too much, but like finger in the air, it feels like we're moving from a lot of infrastructure phase to application phase. And so I'm curious to see what the next 10 years of Ethereum looks like and how you can accelerate an ecosystem of, it seems like financial apps, but also integrating with AI and web apps and things of that nature.
There's so much going on in ecosystem that the Ethereum Foundation was not set up. If I give you an idea, a lot of people said they felt the Ethereum Foundation was very unwelcoming, or the really drastic tweet that I read was, it's easier to get hold of Jesus than someone at the Ethereum Foundation. And I take that feedback and recognize that I hope we weren't coming across as unfriendly and unwelcoming. we just didn't have a plan. If you were a founder or you were an enterprise, we weren't entirely sure what to do with you. And that's because the ecosystem changed so fast that we weren't set up for this. So this restructure is after a lot of thought and a lot of talking that we've decided, okay, we can become much more front facing. The Ethereum Foundation doesn't want to be the main player or main actor in Ethereum. We want to be one of many. So developer growth is a good example. We were hoping other people would step in and do developer growth, and they have done that to a really good point. Same with investors, VCs, accelerators, incubators as well. And I think with founder success team we've just started, we're enhancing that as well. So we're giving out like non-financial support to founders, which we think is more valuable than financial support. And sometimes access to successful DeFi founders that want to talk to new founders, through to pitch deck feedback, being a bit more opinionated of, we think your product sucks, which I think is good feedback for people, rather than they spend the next year on it because we were nice and then they blame us for not working out. I think there's a lot of things to be said about the non-financial support that we're now set up to deliver. The founder success team is now 3 people, and they're absolutely swamped with people wanting to speak with them and get feedback from them as well. And the EF research team is extremely tight on time, but they're actually willing to give some of their time for tech feedback on some of these startups. So it's a really exciting time to actually see everybody getting behind this restructure and it becoming really positive. We also, probably the biggest one that people were surprised about was to see an enterprise team. Because we've got Etherealize, we've got the Enterprise Ethereum Alliance, and now we've got an enterprise team, the Ethereum Foundation. I think this is actually quite an exciting development because enterprises are building a lot of things and they have a lot of questions. They can ask really nuanced smart contract questions that we can go and figure out the answers to, through to, oh, can you help us understand who to connect in DeFi to this? So actually a lot of enterprises need some switchboarding, through to, hey, can we speak to Etherealize as well? So sometimes we work together, sometimes we're talking to them by ourselves. And there's some really exciting companies building L2s and a lot of companies that even L1s that want to become L2s. So we're doing a whole range of things that 6 months ago we weren't set up to do.
So it feels like there's different categories of support. If you're a founder, if you're a developer, if you're an enterprise, I think I missed a couple categories there, but it feels like the types and form factor of support that you get depends on your persona and how we sort of categorize people in the ecosystem.
Yeah, you could see it like a pipeline. You're a developer and then you find a business and then you talk to the other team and then become an app, talk to the app relations team. If you get big enough to become an enterprise, that's great. So there's a whole pipeline of journey that we hope we can take people through as well. And that's really exciting. We can also help developers get more jobs if they go through Speedrun Ethereum, for example, or they want to become a security auditor. We're much more coordinated and communicating with each other as well, which is really powerful.
Mm-hmm.
So the other things I should probably point out is like we had an Ethereum.org team, and that website's really powerful, gets millions of visitors every year, and we've changed it to become the digital studio. What does that mean? It gives us much more broad scope to experiment with videos, AI, and other platforms. Should we go and meet people where they are? Are they on YouTube? Should we go and explore working with YouTube creators or create our own channel? I'm entirely 100% set on the strategy there, but there's a lot of different ways we can now help and support the ecosystem and also bring new users in. One thing I felt like the ecosystem development was doing was watching the same audience. And that audience is really core. But actually, to steal the Eve Stakers phrase, we should be welcoming first, knowledgeable second, and we should really open up to more people and meet people where they are.
Is that audience crypto Twitter?
Crypto Twitter, and yeah, you could generalize it there, I guess. So
Okay.
if you go to ETH Rome, ETH Toronto, ETH Bratislava, you'll see a very similar audience on the conference circuit as well. And I feel like we're doing the ecosystem a disservice by not re-asking the question of, this worked back 2 or 3 years ago, but is this working today?
Mm-hmm.
And the setup is more experimental for us to try new things out. And I think that's super exciting.
Yeah, for sure. Well, I'd love to zoom out and talk about your vision for Ethereum as neutral and visible infrastructure. I want to sort of understand how you I want to understand how you understand Ethereum, and I think we can work back into ecosystem development. And I want to play jazz on top of some of those topics. But let's start with your vision for Ethereum, and how do you think of it as infrastructure for the internet?
Yeah, so I'd love your thoughts on this as well. This is my opinion, and I think there's a narrative with Ethereum that a lot of people in blockchain or outside of blockchain don't understand. I spoke to someone the other day who was like, stablecoins is all over the hot topic of everybody. The downside is everybody thinks stablecoins is built on Bitcoin and they don't really understand the differences of the blockchains. And I think if you look at the internet, back in the day, it captured zero value, which is one reason why it proliferated throughout the world. No one was going to come knocking on your door for a 5,000% increase in internet usage. You could also build on top of the internet as a platform and extract value from it. You could build a shop, you could build a blog and write your thoughts about it and make money. And that was such a huge unlock for the whole world. It's a permissionless layer that you can use. And I feel like Ethereum is a very similar vehicle where it will capture some of the value, but it's not trying to maximally extract value. It wants people to build on top of it, and it wants people to build profitable businesses and build interesting things. I was speaking to someone in China that's using Ethereum and AI agents for monitoring solar panel farms, which is just crazy. I didn't realize there was such a use case, through to stablecoin rails on Ethereum as well. And I feel like people can be really innovative on top of Ethereum, especially with smart contract innovation, that I feel this is a narrative that's not spoken about enough and not understood enough.
It's interesting, the analogy to the internet. And what I love about analyzing to the internet is that we've all grown up with the internet as one of the most disruptive forces in our lives. And it's easier to
Internet broadband as well, which is kind of a similar.
yeah. Yeah, layer 1 to layer 2 moment. But yeah, it's played out, and it's easier in hindsight to talk about what happened than to think about in the future. And I really love the show *Halt and Catch Fire*. It's about a bunch of internet entrepreneurs in the '90s that are trying to reason about what the internet's going to become in the '90s, and you want to like scream at the TV, no, it's going to become this. And
People saying, "Oh, apps, they won't catch on phones. No one will have one."
yeah, and it kind of feels like that moment where we're all kicking around at conferences. What is the open source financial internet going to become? Um, so yeah, that's one reflection that I have back to. And then the second reflection is that if the internet captured no value, well, the naive opposite of that would be to capture value and then, be able to get all these network effects and people excited about it from the start. But I think that you said something that I'm going to reduce to capture a little bit of value, but not all of the value. And I think that that's like a nice middle path between those two polarities that's going to allow Ethereum to grow with the network effects of something that could provide value, but without taking the entire economic pie. And that feels really elegant as well.
Yeah, because people like say we're leading value to L2s. I have a disbelief that that's not the case. I think we're enabling L2s. Yeah, build an L2 and control your piece of the pie. And as Ethereum is a neutral layer, and this is something I think will resonate really well with you. If you are the Bank of Greece, you are not going to build on the Bank of Italy's infrastructure layer and vice versa, because they can change the details on you. And Ethereum is that neutral layer that they can both choose to build on top of and choose whether they want to play in each other's playgrounds or not. And that's a narrative that I feel we should bring back a lot more.
Yeah, I was talking to some protocol researchers around when the ZK provers came out. We were talking about, do we even need L2s anymore? And one of the points that they made, which I thought was quite profound, was that L2s offer political decentralization in addition to the actual scaling of the block space. And I thought that was quite elegant, is that you have these little sort of like puddles that are still Ethereum in some way, but they're more sovereign to a nation or to a bank or to some sort of ecosystem. And I think that there's something beautiful in the polycentricity of that from a political decentralization standpoint.
Yeah, I love that point. There's a technological and security element, but there's also a social element to this too.
Yeah.
Of being part of a wider thing. Plus, if you're annoyed, you can actually splinter off if you want to.
When you think about ecosystem development, it's almost like, I mean, you're developing all of Ethereum, but if you look at it from a polycentric perspective, there's a bunch of little Ethereums, little Ethereums inside of these L2s and their customers and the banks and like Robinhood launching an L2 like that. And be curious to see what the fractal of ecosystem innovation feels like. And one of the beautiful things about the internet is that an innovation happens in one place and then it goes everywhere. And so I'm excited to see, one layer two innovates on grants or like is using deep funding or something like that. And then it can just be copied all across the internet of ecosystems from there. And so I'm just curious to see how that goes and excited for you and excited for anyone who's running an ecosystem out there.
Yeah, I think it's such a great experimental time still for a lot of these developments that I think there's still so much use cases that we haven't yet developed. And the technology is moving at such a speed that it'll be coming. There'll be a next wave, I think, in the next 12 months, especially around privacy that people want. So there's a lot more use cases, especially with capital allocation and AI agents and actually being able to grab lots more data. I think that'll be super interesting.
Yeah. Well, that's obviously what we're focused on with the Allo.Capital podcast being the podcast that you're on and trying to build new interesting crowdfunding primitives. And so I'm excited about how we could build capital allocation tools that would be in service of ecosystem development for the Ethereum ecosystem, but also the broader swath of ecosystems that, okay, say you've got an L1 or an L2 and you're trying to stimulate your ecosystem. How do you actually make sure the money gets routed to the people that are going to do the most stimulating ecosystem development? So that's sort of our niche. And the first tangible example of that is going to be GG24. So in October, Gitcoin is going to be doing a $1.3 million grants round that's going to be focused on Ethereum's biggest problems. And so, I mean, I guess that's a segue into the next question I'd love to ask you. What are the biggest challenges in Ethereum right now, and what would you like to see funded?
I think the biggest block is around developer growth, getting people to on board. And this is like, I think there's hackathons need a big reset. And I think this is a huge opportunity to rip up the rulebook on hackathons. It's, to me, become a bit of a prize farming game rather than what it was originally intended. And somebody said it to me the other day, hackathons were not the product and they have become the product. Actually, the developers are what we should be focusing on here. And I feel like we should run hackathons with no prizes other than you win a 4-week residency to build out your idea. And this gives you like a different type of person coming to this where they have a startup idea already. Or, hey, we're a protocol and we've got 50 open PRs. We need help with developers to do it for. Here's small bounty rewards to come and test our knowledge and fix stuff. There's a ton of stuff with hackathons. I feel like we should change a lot. That would be really cool. I think when allocating capital, I would love to see more data-driven solutions. I see a lot of prediction markets and people voting. And actually, I'll give you the example. If we had a tool that when we spoke to people and experts in that field, they were like, this is the best, it's number one. What turns out is actually was scraping GitHub and we looked at the usage and it turns out no one was using that tool anymore. They'd moved on to other tools. So I manually reached out to these projects and they're like, yeah, that kept on breaking. So we had to move off of it in the end. And it turns out the people who were predicting this knowledge were using knowledge from 4 years ago that they understood about that tool. And I'd love to see more data-driven ideas around that as well. Ideally like a Kaggle for crypto where you can put data competitions on there as well.
Yeah, I'm been following what the Optimism ecosystem has been doing with impact metrics focused retro funding, and I think some of that stuff is really exciting. I think deep funding is also bending in that direction of impact metrics focused work. And man, thank goodness for providers like Open Source Observer and Carl Cervone, like the people who are making it easy to get the data. I think that there's a lot of interesting things that can be done there.
That Open Source Observer data set is great. Rick at OpenQ is doing some really cool stuff as well. So there's actually a ton of data, which I don't think is being used yet, but I don't think we're far away from actually getting it out there as well. The Gitcoin round, I remember, did use like, it was percentage based on some data and some on human element. And that was probably my favorite round so far that I have seen some general fairness coming out of,
Mhm.
because I feel like the data helps people make decisions, which isn't always there.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. And the one problem with data driven stuff is that it can only be retroactive. And so if you're trying to fund something on the basis of future impact, which a lot of developers just coming out of school and just getting their start just need to be able to make rent while they fund and they start to create that impact. I feel like there's a bunch of different money Legos, capital allocation Legos in different places, and it's just a matter of assembling them in a way that is cohesive for the entire builder journey.
I love what Optimism's been doing with its experiments, and it's probably pushing the boundaries. I hear a lot of feedback that people don't value the retroactive as much. Do you get the same feedback as well? They're like, oh, that's retroactive. It doesn't count. So they actually don't respect it as much as I feel they should. This is a lot of feedback I've had.
I think that what I hear is different depending on the audience segment. If you're like a left terrace who's been building Rocky for the last 5 years, or someone who's been in the ecosystem for a while, and you get a big chunk of retro funding. I mean, there are projects like that I know that are surviving on the basis of their retro funding in through the bear market. And, but if you're a builder first starting out, I could see why it wouldn't be all that attractive. So I think it just depends on the builder profile. And that's one of the tough things about, I think, decentralization and how broad the ecosystem is that there's so many different size, shapes, and needs and skills coming out of the builder ecosystem that it's kind of hard to have a one size fits all for all of them.
Yes. Yeah, that's a good point. And it's even harder to segment them into their needs and what they what they need to survive and thrive as well. And there's also like, how do you get new tools? How do we get another solidity that actually can bound out the ecosystem?
Yeah. I've been diving in really deep on vibe coding and MCP servers and things of that nature. And I think that the development experience is going to be entirely driven by that over the next couple of years. So I'll be curious to see if there's any investments we could make there that make it much shorter to write Solidity code and then to get it audited. Maybe like you have an AI auditor that costs 1,000 tokens instead of $100,000. And so stuff like that has been a little bit of what I've been exploring.
Yeah, like I was talking to Austin Griffiths yesterday about this, about how do we get, you know, AI into speedrun Ethereum? How do we get more vibe coders that can check out smart contracts? And then I've also been talking about how can we get AI agents to keep checking smart contracts aren't edited by anybody. So if there's money in there and the AI agent spots smart contract been edited, pull my funds. There's so much like cool stuff we can do with vibe coding and AI agents at the moment, I think.
Yeah, I can imagine an experience like, someone sends me a DeFi contract and I still don't know which DeFi contracts to trust because I'm too lazy to look up the audits and see what their epistemology is and the reputation of the auditor. But you could almost have like a AI agent that does all that legwork for you and provides you more informed decisions before you sign a transaction.
Yeah, exactly. What have you been building with vibe coding?
Oh, I've just been experimenting with building some small dApps to, all of Gitcoin 1.0 I coded myself and with a small team. And then Gitcoin 3.0, like, I think it got away from me. And so I've just been trying to get closer to the metal on building crowdfunding applications. So, quadratic funding, retro funding, we're messing around with some AI agent based stuff for GG24. And, as you may know, Gitcoin's pivoting away from quadratic funding and into any mechanism is available. So I think it would be fun to propose to Gitcoin, like if there's a $1.3 million like prize pool, like I could propose like a 10K round on top of something I vibe coded. And I think that would be a fun way of returning to my roots as a software developer, but without like building the entire infrastructure myself. So yeah, stuff like that. And I've been, really deep in Claude code and trying to figure out MCP servers to make it easier to build that kind of stuff. So yeah, that's been the experimentation. And I know that other Ethereum developers are starting to vibe code. I don't want to name them because I don't know if this is a controversial thing, but they're like, I haven't actually like handwritten organic code in like 6 months. So
Oh, really? Okay. And
yeah.
it shows you how fast things have changed.
Mhm. Yeah. But okay, so ecosystem development, supporting developers, supporting founders. I'm really excited to see what happens at the application layer of Ethereum and what kind of new primitives people are using. over the next 10 years. So, yeah, I mean, is there anything that you call out as trends that you're excited about?
We touched on AI agents, and this is the thing that we're really starting to see more of. There's talk about us having a bigger initiative in terms of, let's call it an AI team that it can build standards, encourage builders to build AI on blockchain. There's a ton of people interested in this at the moment, and there's a lot of projects involved. So Eigenlayers just had a big restructured Eigencloud where it's going to be a major part of AI agents. You've got virtuals coming on as well. So I feel like that's going to be a big trend for us in the future. And then the other part that I'm excited about is the apps. I think the app experience, and we are on the cusp of abstracting a lot of the tech out of people's way to make this a much smoother environment. If I think about, like, I have a EtherFi cash card, it's great. I can just use this. Don't even think about it being crypto or fiat or anything. So there's a ton of apps that I think are starting to get really, really advanced on this as well. I'm using a new wallet, which is just fantastic. If I don't actually open my wallet for 14 months, it sends all the funds to my family's wallet address. And there's just some really cool innovations like that I think are refining the experience for a lot of people.
Yeah, I'm excited about the inheritance planning stuff. I think that's like a really smart thing that needs to be built. The AI stuff, it feels so like the AI slash crypto feels like this hyper object that's just got so many sizes and capacities to it. And I spend a lot of my time just fucking around and finding out empirically and reading papers and then not being smart enough to read papers. So I upload them to AI to understand the AI. But yeah, it feels like that's where the vast field of potential is. But the web entrepreneur in me just wants to build more websites, but I'm trying to break that and move a little bit more towards moving in the primitives that the way things are actually going. So AI feels like definitely a core skill to build.
Yeah, and obviously we're getting tons of interest from organizations talking about stablecoins as well. I wrote a post about the Danish Refugee Council sending stablecoins to South Sudan because it was famine. And I actually got like 3 NGOs reach out to me and be like, how do we use stablecoins? How do we do X, Y, Z? And the previous Ethereum Foundation wouldn't have necessarily written something or helped. Whereas now we can actually be more opinionated and help guide those NGOs to actually using stablecoins. And I think the number is in the billions of dollars that get sent around the world to those regions.
That's great. I mean, that's amazing. I find it a little ironic that there's the green pill community and the regen community has been trying so much to figure out how to build pro-social crypto experiments, and we've been very retro funding and QF forward, and be the ultimate irony of stablecoins. We're just the killer app to bring these NGOs on chain, but it'll definitely happen eventually. And I think that that's like kind of like the gateway drug to more advanced financial primitives. And what I get really excited about there is building networks that can distribute money to the edges in a more effective way than these like centralized hierarchies in these NGOs can. So I think it'd be cool to build abundance networks in all of these places, and anywhere where there's an internet connection, you have the possibility of routing resources. So there's a lot of good that can be done there.
Yep, totally. And on a capital allocation, I think there's seems to be a lot of new projects coming out, a lot of new thinking around it that is using new thinking around like, okay, this quadratic funding is interesting that Gitcoin's gone away from this and is looking at newer models as well, that I feel this is a turning point for funding as well. There's a number of grant funding that I feel we should just be more efficient and smarter with. And sometimes, so we've set up a team that does co-funding. So if it's a big initiative, we will try and rally 5, 6, 7, 8 interested parties that all have a vested interest in seeing that succeed. You could call it a kind of fund your dependencies on a big level as well.
Yeah.
We started doing a lot of that work, and that's been really successful. And I feel like that makes sense to us, but on a greater scale, like Gitcoin, I feel like seeing let's say the 1.4 million you're doing in October would be really interesting to see, like what ecosystem blockers we can unblock through that.
Yeah, I call this funding chain lightning. Because in Warcraft 3 there's a spell where you can heal one of your units and then it heals a bunch of them all together. So I call this funding chain lightning. And yeah, it'd be really great to see as Ethereum becomes more polycentric and plural and like this is almost like an inevitability of the modular roadmap is that all of these different networks are going to have different needs, and if they could go to market together and fund some zk primitive or some set of things that they need all together, the infrastructure for building that kind of funding chain lightning across ecosystems I think could be really really exciting, and I hope to just see it sort of emerge. But um, yeah, that's my hope, is that it starts to emerge, and that we can see more examples of that in the next couple cycles. I mean, is there anything that you think is going to come up as something that's co-funded across 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 ecosystems soon?
We're working on privacy languages at the moment, so that touches on that's Noir, and that touches across everything from enterprises to apps to L2s that can all use it, and I think that'll be pretty powerful. So that's probably the big one at the moment I see coming on. That's a ZK privacy programming language,
Yeah.
and that's Ethereum Foundation, Etherealize, and a few others being involved in that.
Privacy, I know, is something that Vitalik and the OG cypherpunk roots of Ethereum care a lot about. But I also see a certain part of the ecosystem that's agnostic to it, and especially with developers, a lot of these new primitives add computational complexity or complexity in the UX of the apps. And so I'm hopeful that it can be easier out of the box to build privacy tools. You either need to build more understanding in the market of why privacy is so important or make the barriers less. And maybe it's a combination of both. But I've certainly been privacy pilled since coming into the Web3 ecosystem and hanging out with the OG cypherpunks.
Yeah, like Aadhaar in India, it's a digital ID. You have to give away all of your data if you want to sign up to a service. And we built a non-Aadhaar, so you can say, yes, I'm over 18, but you don't have to give all your data away. And we're hoping that gets more adoption. So there are things that we do as case examples to show it's possible,
Mhm.
but it's dependent on enough users wanting privacy to actually help it come through as well.
Yeah. Another category of thing that I'm excited about is Ethereum localism. So just basically this idea that we can, in local communities and especially places that are underbanked or unbanked, how can we roll out everything that Ethereum can offer, from stablecoins to quadratic funding to loans in these communities? And so there's a bunch of people that are really excited about Ethereum localism, and there's going to be an activation in Dev Connect coming up in Buenos Aires and starting to do Ethereum localism events across the world. So curious if you have any takes on that movement.
Yes, on the org chart, you'll see the team Ethereum everywhere.
Mhm.
And this team is set up to help support, coordinate, build local meetups, community hubs, and deal with various different conferences. As I said earlier about conferences, some of the conferences served a purpose previously, but where I am based, it probably doesn't make sense to have a conference once a year because of the expense. You're better off having 6 to 12 local meetups that actually give more regular touch points to people to actually
Mhm.
come and meet the community as well. So that's definitely a way we see things going as well. And we've never had a team that helps coordinate and support this. So build out packs for like, here's meetings you could run. Here's something that worked really well in this city. Try it out here and experiment as well. And we feel by offering, again, more hands-on support, we'll have a lot more um, success with local meetups as well. And these physical interactions are where magic can really happen as well. So this is why the community hub in San Francisco, we want to build some out in Bangalore, New York, London, Buenos Aires. And this is where we can see teams building things, investors coming in and meeting those teams, and people being inspired by the local community. So we definitely we don't want to take away anybody's identity with this. Ethereum everywhere is an umbrella that could help amplify your local community. That's how we kind of feel about it. I'm slightly I guess it's slightly controversial, is that I think some local communities, should it exist, if it exists off of purely funding basis, or should it be self-sustaining? I see it as a really good entry route to a lot of people coming and working in the ecosystem. There's many people at the Ethereum Foundation, I won't name them in case they don't want to be named, but many of them came to a local meetup. Some of them about Bitcoin, they ended up in Ethereum, and then some in Ethereum, and now they work at the Ethereum Foundation. And I think the 3 people who now work at Ethereum everywhere all started their own local community up as well, which shows you there's a pathway to coming through and ended up working in the ecosystem.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I think that one of the things that I really think is really cool about these local ecosystems is how there's all these social relationships that go back, in some cases, generations, in some cases, years. And that feels like a really important trust network to sort of graft a funding network onto. And I think if you lead with funding first and then trust later, it doesn't work out as well. But there's all these web of trust that exists locally that I think that we've been experimenting with how to allocate capital in these local communities, leveraging them. So,
Yeah, I think people underestimate the power of local communities, and especially DevConnect volunteers. If you're a DevConnect, go and talk to some volunteers, because I met multiple people from investment banks volunteering in the last DevCon. I met people who were like, oh, I'm a lawyer and I love blockchain and I want to come and like work in the ecosystem, so I thought I would volunteer. And you just get such a range of people. I originally naively assumed it was all students, and then you go and talk to them over the years and you're like, wow, the range of people in these local communities is massive.
yeah, totally. Well, I guess we're getting towards the bottom of the hour, and I'm going to start moving us into final questions now. If you're maximally successful in 10 years, what does the world look like, or what does Ethereum look like?
Oh, wow. The ultimate settlement layer, decentralized, and allowing anyone to build anything they want.
Okay, short and sweet. That's great. Any other colors to add on top of that?
I feel like if you are building in the ecosystem, you've got a startup, you're thinking about allocating capital, reach out to me and I'd love to chat, or at least someone inside the Ethereum Foundation would like to talk to you as well. I can't handle the volume, but reach out to me and I'm keen to hear from you.
Great. Is there anything I didn't ask that you want to say?
I don't think so, but I'd love to talk more about your round you're going to do in October and think about more ideas for you.
Okay. Yeah, that can be a call to action for everyone. Gitcoin Grants 24 in October. If you're feeling inspired about some Ethereum ecosystem development stuff, check out gov.gitcoin.co and propose a problem area that you want to focus on. Really trying to make it open so that many people can show up and organize these things. But yeah, it'll be a process, but it starts in GG24 in October. Cool. Where can people find you online, James?
They can find me on X on James_Gaps, or they can find me on Telegram at Snapcrackle.
Great. All right. Thanks so much, James. You just heard from James Smith of the EF, excited about the work he's doing to accelerate eco dev in the Ethereum ecosystem. I think it's very needed. I think it's going to help accelerate Ethereum. Thanks for listening to the Allo.Capital podcast. Again, we are featuring the people who are building the capital allocation layer of the post-tokenization and post-AI internet. This episode is for informative purposes only and is not financial advice. Do your own research. Do not make any financial decisions based off of these episodes. Thanks for listening. See you on the Ethernets.